How about that?
Wow.
Woo! How about them opening credits?
Is that setting the tone? Is that setting a new tone for our show?
Oh yeah. That totally raises the bar. Absolutely.
That
All right,
music sounds so dramatic. I feel like I should be strapping on a tactical vest while I listen to it.
Absolutely. The Klingons were going to attack any second. All right. So, how is everybody doing tonight?
Good. We survived a tropical storm.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I didn't even know about it. I've been paying no attention to any news other than political stuff because I'm anal and terrified. And so I woke up this morning and half the branches in the trees in our backyard were on the ground, and our driveway was completely covered in pine straw, and our cars were completely covered in pine straw. I had no idea what was going on.
As usually happens when we have natural disasters, I slept completely through it. So let's get started on our discussion about episode 3 of Discovery Season 3. Elizabeth, how are you tonight?
I'm good. I just finished watching the episode about 15 minutes ago.
So it's fresh in your mind.
But yes, it is. And I certainly liked it better than last week's.
I see that you are eternal.
I am. and interesting, that whole quote, that whole interchange about the cake thing was a clue to me that Tilly is of Southern origins, because hummingbird cake is a Southern dish.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
It's a Jamaican dish, actually.
It is a Jamaican dish, but it was imported and appropriated, as many things from the Black culture were in the South. But it is considered a traditional Southern dessert.
Yeah, I'd actually. Yes, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to ask you how you are.
Oh, I'm okay.
But we're talking about cake. That's far more important.
It is much more important than my state of mind. And I already told you I'm obsessing about politics and the election, and I'm a poll worker next week on Tuesday.
That's right.
So
that's right.
God's work, man.
Congratulations.
I'm looking ahead to next week with excitement and dread, and I will probably sleep all day on November 4th, no matter what happens. But anyway, yes, I am a Southerner. I was born and raised in Georgia, but I had never heard of hummingbird cake before. So I Googled it after Tilly mentioned it, and it sounds really good. I found a recipe. Hang on. It was, let's see. Yes, it's a Jamaican spice cake. It's made from bananas, pineapple, pecans, and 6 adult hummingbirds.
Well, that's optional. There's a vegan option.
You blend them all together, feathers and all, and you put that into the batter.
Do you debeak it first?
No, you use those for decorations on the top.
Oh, I see.
Well, that's one way. Another way is the beak is like the baby in a king cake, and whoever gets the beak.
Risk death, eat the cake. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Clarence, how are you?
I'm doing well. Glad to be back on with you guys.
Very glad to see you.
Yeah.
The last times that you were on, we were talking about Lower Decks.
Yeah, and it's good to be back on live action Star Trek. I'm really excited about what's going on, and just refreshing to be back to the live action side of things.
I know, absolutely. All right, so let's jump into episode 3, People of Earth, where the ship goes back to Earth to try and figure out what happened to the Federation. Turns out the Federation is no longer there. They get into a very, very, after you get through all the character moments, you get down to a very traditional Star Trek story of 2 warring factions coming together and finding common ground. After you rip the masks off, you realize that you are the same as each other and your concerns are the same, and they find a way to make peace, we hope. After that, the bridge crew goes down to Earth, hovers around a fake tree in fake San Francisco, and they have a lovely little moment. So tell me what you thought of this week's episode, and then we'll get into some specific issues after that. Elizabeth, what'd you think? since it's
I liked it.
very fresh in your mind from 15 minutes ago.
I liked it. I thought it was getting back into the typical Star Trek story trope. But I liked the progression. I liked that you learned more about some of the characters, and I particularly love the retrospective of Michael's hair that we were treated to at the very beginning that helped us understand the progression of time.
Yes, I love that. Vandy Beth, what'd you think?
I really enjoyed it. I like that they keep screwing with our expectations. Like the Earth is no longer in the Federation, and the pirate was not who we expected him to be. I thought that the humor was, as usual for this series, was very much on point. I love Stamets' interactions with Tilly. I love Tilly's interactions with Michael Burnham. If I had just a general complaint about this episode, I would say it was probably a little too sentimental in some of the interactions between the characters.
Okay.
Like, a little more touchy-feely than I think is really than they've really justified by the story so far.
Interesting.
And related to that, I think Michael and Book's relationship is a little too settled in than it would be after only a year. And they keep referring to the adventures they've had together, and I just don't feel like they've been together long enough to have had that many adventures.
They haven't been together on screen long enough to convey that.
I mean, the year that we know that they have spent together doesn't seem like a long enough period to have been enough time for all those adventures.
I agree with that, but I feel like we haven't had enough screen time for us to buy into their relationship. Like, they're establishing all these things that they've done for this past year, and it's conveyed to us only by, hey, you remember that time we went to Planet X and we saved each other? And I just don't feel like we get them yet.
Right.
They're saying things at us, but it's hard for us to receive it, I think. Clarence, tell us what you thought overall of this episode.
Overall, I really enjoyed the episode. I feel like the episode was all about connections, the Discovery trying to connect back to their home world, and as well, Michael Burnham, connecting back with the Discovery crew. And then, it just goes on to show like how if you have the lack of connection as far as let me back that back. As far as being insular, I think that's where Earth is at this point in the story, where we're not. I feels like it's an analog to some of the things going on with us of how their borders are closed, basically. So there's a lack of connection there. There's a lack of knowing what your neighbors are doing or keeping in touch with them, and we see them as enemy now. So I feel like the message of connections was echoed a lot this episode, and sometimes we maybe should just talk about it.
Exactly. So we get a little bit of more background on what's going on here. 700 years after Discovery left their home time, all the dilithium supply dried up, whatever that means. Ran out, I don't know. But then at some point, they don't specify when, at some point after that, there's a sudden explosion and all dilithium everywhere just goes boom, apparently. And any ship that's engaged in warp drive at that time explodes, which takes out the majority of the fleet. Starfleet is decimated. The Federation breaks up. And we now know that as Vandy Beth mentioned, Earth is no longer part of the Federation. They are now very isolationist. So I think that's going to be, I wonder how much we're going to come back to Earth and have that be a factor in the story going forward from this point. What do you think?
Well, I just wonder if somehow this is a tiny little step towards once the Federation is reestablished, which I guess is what they're hoping for, is that reopening like the Federation facilities back on Earth.
Yeah. They're all still there.
Yeah. In pretty good shape, it appears. I don't know what they're using the academy for, but somebody's taking care of it because the lawns are mowed and
That's true.
the building doesn't have like ivy growing all over it.
That's a good point.
It's a swap meet.
Well, location every Saturday.
Yeah. The
local macrame club meets there.
Flea market every Saturday.
I thought it was. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Clarence.
I was going to say, I feel like at some point we will make it back to Earth. It seems like they're setting up this season to be a lesson in what Starfleet is. In the first part of it, we got today was diplomacy. I feel like each episode is going to give us some hint of that, and maybe we'll bookend the season by coming back to Earth to maybe establish Starfleet and Federation there. It seems like that's where they're going.
Yeah. And I like that you brought that up because when we go back to the first episode, when we did our show, I said something like, obviously Burnham is going to be the focal point for this whole like reformation of the Federation, but Discovery coming back into the mix, and especially Saru, he is such a model of what the Federation stands for and believes in. And I think I did not expect that. Obviously, from tonight's episode, we see that that's really going to be the case, that Saru is the one who really is the force for driving these two disparate peoples together. And what I didn't really kind of expect, and maybe I should have thought of this, is that it's going to come down to him because Burnham has kind of not lost her way, but this year of being away from Discovery and away from Starfleet has changed her point of view. And I thought that was a really interesting point of growth for her. What did you think about that?
I thought that you're right on target. I mean, Giorgio brought it up, the fact that, you've been free for like a year. It feels good, doesn't it? And then her conversation with Saru at the end was, I've been away for a year. I've put away a lot of this, or pushed away from a lot of this, and it's going to take me a while to find my way back to it. But do we really want her to find her way back to it completely, or do we think that the skills and the growth that she's experienced over the past year is exactly what she needs to be depending on, and what the crew need to be depending on with her and her new role as number one.
Well, I think she will find her way back because she is the main character of the show, and the show's title is Discovery. So, it's not going to become the Michael and Book show, because then where does Discovery fit into that? And it hadn't occurred to me before the season began, but since the rest of you have been talking this way, I'm just kind of taking it for granted that Discovery is going to go back to either its proper time or to the TNG timeline that we're more familiar with after this season. And for that to happen, it's going to have to be Discovery and Michael together. So whatever is going on with her, I think by the end of the season, she is going to be reconfigured back into a Starfleet officer with maybe some additional things that she cares about, like transworms. But
who doesn't care about transworms?
I care deeply about transworms. But then that's the new person that she will be at the end of this.
Well, I thought about it while watching this episode too, is that I wondered if the arc of the storyline for this season will be them discovering what happened. And even though it was booked at the end of season 2 as this is a one-way trip, if they're going to find their way back to their former timeline and then somehow try to keep the events from setting themselves in motion, back in that timeline. or not that timeline. I guess it would be somewhere between that timeline and this timeline for them to be able to figure out how to keep avoiding it.
Yeah, I think there could be a potential jump to before the burn happened. I think that could be a possibility. I don't believe they go back to the TNG era. I don't think.
Yeah.
I think they'll muddle things much up even more than they already are. But as far as
yeah, agreed.
But as far as the new Burnham we got, I really love that she's experienced this growth in lieu of having her crew to depend on. I feel like the qualities that she's gained over the course of the last year is going to make her a stronger officer ultimately. When you have something that you depend on so dearly for strength pulled away from you, she was left all alone. So she had to kind of evolve in lieu of that and become a better, I don't know, I was a better person, but a tougher person might be the better word to say. And, I will think she will move back toward what we know of her a little bit. Cause we have George Joe kind of on that end of the spectrum of being the loose cannon in the crew. But yeah, I do like seeing this a little bit tougher, a little bit more gung ho Burnham in this episode.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I hadn't thought about it before, but it's interesting that Burnham has sort of always been the sort of like a dichotomy character. Like she started out as she's Vulcan by upbringing, but human by birth. She is, so, and in this one, we have her as she's now an independent woman, and also Starfleet. So she's walking the line between these two different worlds like she has on the previous two seasons. And I think that's really an interesting way to place her in this narrative.
Yes.
Right. Thank you for that affirmation. I appreciate that. I really enjoyed, and I think we're going to get a little bit more of this as we go. I thought it was really interesting that they touched on the crew, and we only got this through Tilly, but the crew starting to really come to terms with the actions that they've taken. When you're in an emergency situation and you say, Burnham, we're with you. We're going to jump to the future with you. You get to the future, and then you say, holy shit, I will never see my family again. Yeah. I will never celebrate my sister's birthday again. I will never, when my father passes away, I won't be there. That has got to hit hard.
And I think that it hits harder because, as Tilly said, it's not just that I didn't get to say goodbye. It's like they've been dead now for how many hundreds of years. I mean, that's finality at its worst. I mean,
yeah.
Yeah. And also on that, I mean, once they've made this huge sacrifice to save life as we know it, and then they get to this future and they made the sacrifice, but it's not what they thought it would be. It makes them feel kind of empty, I think. But yeah, just to leave your loved ones behind and make that change or make that jump, and it's just the future is not what you thought it would be.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, and how could it be? I mean, you have no way of having any idea of what you're jumping into, and I think that they have, just like they explore Strange New Worlds. The Federation has become a Strange New World. I mean, this is completely foreign to them.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be such an enjoyable ride the more we get into this.
So
where do
we go ahead.
Where do we think the Federation is?
Well,
Nebraska.
we know they're not on Earth, but they could be in Nebraska. I don't know.
I don't know.
No. Elizabeth Allen meant planet Nebraska.
Right. Clearly. Oh, and to follow up on what we were just saying, I need to point out that Alex Kurtzman has said that Discovery will be in this timeline for as long as the show runs from this point. So there is no going back. There is no in interviews within the last week or two.
Okay.
Yeah, well, so it is.
That's reassuring. I'm glad to know that.
Absolutely. If they started jumping all around every season, it would be
quantum
ridiculous.
It would be Quantum Leap.
Exactly.
And then they would bring Scott Bakula back.
That's what I was going to say.
Hey, I'm down for that.
I am too. I'm telling you. I loved seeing the memorial wall of the officers that had been lost in the battle and in the jump. I thought that was a really nice touch.
That would have meant that I think that would have had more impact if it had been pictures of the people instead of just their comm badges, because they're just comm badges don't really tug at the heartstrings the way a candid snapshot would.
Right.
But yeah, it was a nice post 9/11 touch.
Yeah, exactly. Let's talk about when they finally get to Earth. We learned already that Earth is no longer in the Federation, but now we have the United Earth Defense Force. I think that's a really, really interesting idea, that they have basically withdrawn from the Federation, created their own one planet. We are our own entity. We shun everybody else.
Space Force.
There you go. It's 1,000 years from now, Space Force will be.
Somebody resurrected it.
Oh, that's terrific. But I find that interesting that that's sort of like that Earth has gone through this sort of withdrawal from the galactic community. Right. And I'm really excited to see how that plays out later on.
Yeah, which and now we're all humans from Earth, so of course that has the most resonance for us. But I think it will also be important to find out what's happening on Vulcan and Andoria and the other and Kronos and the other
absolutely
that we're familiar with,
without a doubt. There is a mid-season episode coming up called Unification 3.
Oh,
and as Trekkers all know, Unification is a two-part the title of a two-part story from Next Gen, which dealt with the Vulcans and the Romulans reforming their society. So I'm really interested to see if that is what when you say Unification 3, obviously that's what you're intending the audience to think of. So are they clearly doing that, or is this another redirection, like they're sending us down a path only to be surprised when we get to the destination?
Right.
What's so funny?
I'm sorry, I'm still chuckling over looking to the side Wendy's comment about having trouble dreaming. She almost missed our show because she had trouble dreaming. Wendy couldn't imagine a world in which this show was happening. Oh, I'm sorry, Wendy. I love you, Wendy.
Chris Railing just finished watching and headed over here. Awesome. If you have any thoughts or questions, share them with us. We will definitely address them on screen. Another thing that I want to talk about is Detmer. We had last week when Discovery arrives in the future and she gets her bell rung pretty hardcore and was clearly, to me at least, going through some PTSD, some survivor guilt, maybe a concussion. And I think we see a little bit more of that tonight. She, when
the hesitation,
when Burnham is talking about what the burn is, Detmer's the one who says, how many died? How many casualties were there? Like she's fixated on comrades being killed. And when Saru gives her an order to move into battle, to move to intercede between Earth firing on these other ships, she freaked out and was afraid to follow his orders. And I am loving it. I think that's, we talked about maybe it was like Control taking her over. I think that a character dealing with these kind of issues is far more interesting than a resurrection of the Control storyline and all that. So I'm really looking forward to seeing where we're going with this.
Yeah, Control was my first, theory on what's going on with her.
Mm-hmm.
What threw me off, especially when we get to this episode, is that Stamets is okay. Stamets is back to the old whippy quippy Stamets, but
Yeah.
but her, she's just a little bit off. Detmer's a little bit off. So I mean, I know PTSD affects different people differently, but it seems like it's more to the story. I just can't quite put my finger on it, but it just seems like it's more to the story.
Wendy's. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Wendy.
I continue to think that there's something else going on with Detmer instead of simply PTSD. Not that PTSD isn't serious, obviously, but I don't think it's control. But I do think there's some other thing that's happening with her.
Yeah,
I'd love to be wrong. I think PTSD by itself, if done well, if handled well, would be very interesting to see. But I still think it's possible that something else could also be going on.
Wendy asks the most important question of the night, and where is Reno? We know she's a kind of a guest star, but she's always so cool. What would she make of this? She is one of those, like every other episode kind of thing. She was in 5 episodes of last season, and from what I understand, she's in a good deal more this year. But obviously not going to be every episode. But I think the ones that she's in, she's going to have a lot more play in, and I'm really excited about that because I love her.
Yeah,
best character on the show.
Yeah, agreed.
Pretty great, Bobcat.
And my old associate Kevin Murphy says, hi, Kevin. How are you? I am so glad to see you and hear from you. Please tell Mia that I said hi. I hope you both are doing really well. Chris chimes in with, I thought there was something from the wormhole because several characters were struggling with foggy brain. Yeah. But it definitely seems to be lingering with Detmer. Yeah. So anyway, I'm excited about any of the secondary characters getting this kind of through line, in the narrative. Anytime you throw Detmer a plot line, that's going to carry Owo with her because they seem to be really close, like best friends. And that means you're going to get Tilly because, Tilly is sort of the go-between, of the main characters and the secondary characters. So that's going to, anything they do with those characters, I'm a fan of.
Yeah, they often show Owosekon and Detmer together.
Yeah,
I really want to see more of Bryce and Reese.
Absolutely.
We know. We know next to nothing about those two.
Yeah, most people don't even know their names. So they definitely need to do some work on those.
I know their names, but I couldn't tell you which one is Reese and which one is Bryce.
I knew you were going to say that. Bryce is the communications guy, and Reese is the one that
the other navigator, right? Is she the other navigator, the other pilot?
No, Reese and Bryce are both. Reese and Bryce are both men.
Oh,
he's the Asian guy who, when they say to fire on stuff, he fires on them.
Okay, you're right.
And they're both cool dudes. I follow them on Twitter, and they're pretty awesome. But any of y'all watch the after show that Will Wheaton does, the Ready Room?
Not yet.
No.
Have you?
Yes, they showed a clip from next week's episode, and it looks like that Detmer storyline is definitely carrying through into next week, which very excited.
Good.
So what do we think about the new Trill character?
Well, that's a good next topic to jump into. What do y'all think? I
think that character/actor is going to be challenging to some people's wokeness because we were told we were getting a non-binary character this season.
But she's referred to as a she, or
yeah,
right.
Yeah, it was confusing to me too.
She is referred to as a she, but the actor who plays her, Adira, Adira is the character's name. The actor who plays Adira is Blue Del Barrio.
Yep.
Who themselves is non-binary.
Yep. And goes by they, their.
Right.
Yeah.
Not she, which I thought. So I was going to ask. I was coming up with questions before we went live, before I even saw the episode, and I was wondering if promising a non-binary character and having it turn out to be associated with the Trill. She's actually human, but she's carrying a Trill symbiont.
Mm-hmm.
So does that undermine the character? Is that a cheap sci-fi way of selling non-binary to a wider audience? Or is it a clever way of presenting an idea in a way that an audience can grasp?
But the Trills, the only Trills I remembered were from DS9. And they always identify. Well, yeah, that's true. They always identified with the gender of the host that they took in. So is the Trill itself a non-binary character, but it just appropriates the gender of the host that it takes? Is that how it works?
I believe.
I don't think they've ever told us anything about Trill symbiont reproduction. So as far as we know, they are sexless / genderless.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And that seems to be borne out by the fact that they tend to take on whatever's the gender identity of their host.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting too, because using a Trill now in today's society basically is a whole different matter than when Next Gen and DS9 were on the air. If you remember that episode where Data creates an offspring in the episode called The Offspring, it's an undefined figure who then has to select a race and a gender that it wants to identify with. And it says, well, why do I have to choose this? And Troy says, well, you have to be male or female. It's one or the other. And whichever one you choose affects the way that other people interface with you, basically. And I thought that's so interesting. That dialogue meant nothing to me when I watched it in whatever year that was. And you hear it now, and it is so foreign. Like conceptually, it is so different. So maybe they're using the Trill now as a way of presenting a different kind of idea in a different way.
Could be. I'd be disappointed if they're being that basic about it. And when I say basic, I mean like Kristen Bell in The Good Place saying basic.
But with that question in mind, I'd come up with that question yesterday, so I hadn't seen the episode yet. So I come to the episode and found out that the character is referred to as she, and that really threw me off. The description is she's someone with amnesia who then has to explain her gender to other people. And I thought, I don't know how this is kind of stacking up with what they're saying about who she is, who they are. I don't even know what pronoun to use.
I was a little disappointed, and then I was surprised that I think it was Captain Adoye that made that statement. It was a little shocking to me because, as I knew we were going to talk about this character, I was looking for what pronoun to use there. And as far as Trills from the past, I think that I can't pretend to speak how this would, affect this character, but to me, it feels like it may be undermining it a bit because I think we got that programming a lot in DS9 of Cisco even calling Dax old man,
Right.
So what are we really supposed to think here? I think we're just open to a Trill being non-binary. That's what I always thought of it. And to me, that's the way it's presented in DS9. But yeah, this is interesting. The direction they're going here with Adira.
Well, if Earth has been
presented as binary, I think they're presented as a changing binary.
Yeah.
They are one of the alternating. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Elizabeth.
No, I was just going to say I was interested with Earth being so isolationist, and apparently having been isolationist for quite some time. How did somebody get a trill? I mean,
Yeah.
I'd be interesting to figure out how that all happened, especially if she really, her human host person is the same age that she says that she is. I mean, I know that trills are very old beings, but the host,
Yeah.
she said as the host, she was only like 16 or 17.
But
Right.
her previous host was human. Or
Yeah.
no, was on Earth.
On the planet, and probably got stuck there. Yeah.
Because the transmission that they received was from Earth.
Right.
Well,
I
that's
would
true.
I would guess.
Oh, go ahead.
I'm just guessing about the reason that symbiont is in a human is because with the dilithium shortage now, they were in a situation where their most recent Trill host died.
Yeah.
And there was no way to get them back to Trill in time to implant them in a proper Trill host.
That's what I think too. And that goes back to the Next Gen episode where the Trill are introduced. The host dies, and Riker has to carry the symbiont for a while until another Trill can get there. So I think that's exactly what's going on. All right, let me get a couple of comments because there's another doozy from Wendy. Love you, Wendy. Chris says, definitely using Trill for non-binary person is an old school Star Trek cheat. They have utilized Trill for orientation as well, but did not. That's true. Did not stay with the storylines. They eventually faded into the background. That's true with that Dax and her previous spouse coming back together, both now in women's bodies. Yep. Wendy says, I'm surprised characters on Star Trek in general use gender programming, which she had tended to say pronouns. Damn it. Gender programming could be a really interesting storyline, I will say.
Well, they have programmable matter, so
Exactly.
Yeah, there you
go. Chris now says, same old straight white men in charge of the overall storyline, except that this was written by two women.
Yeah.
This episode was. This is their version of an attempt. Yeah, I can kind of see that. I won't dispute that. I want to, let me consult my notes real quick. Okay, so the character we're talking about is Adira. And she says that she's 16.
right.
There was one moment in the score that really jumped out at me. Jeff Russo, who does the score, he composed for a ton of shows like Umbrella Academy and Fargo and Lucifer, and he does the music for Picard. And I love his stuff. I've loved the scores for Discovery a hell of a lot. But there was this moment where the second time we see Adira on screen, it's Stamets who finds her doing whatever it is she's doing. He says, I know what you're doing. And then they have this little conversation. The music immediately changes to something that really sounds like it's telling you she's a precocious teen. I mean, it's such a dramatic shift in tone. I thought it was such a weird thing, and I'm not sure if it undermined the character. I'm not sure if it undermined the setting, the situation. You know, it just seemed so weird. That's just my thought. Nobody else noticed that, apparently.
Yeah.
When you watch it again, you'll be like, "Oh, that's that score part that he was talking about." I'm
embarrassed to admit I don't pay that much attention to the score.
Yeah, I don't either a lot on the first viewing, but that one just stuck out so much. It was so, I don't know, so different in tone. What does Wendy say? I need to know more to judge the maker's treatment of non-binary. Yeah, without a doubt. We definitely need to see where that storyline is going from here on. And there's a second character that's being introduced, an actual Trill that we're going to meet later in the season. And maybe next week, because trailer for next week seems like it's at least partially set on Trill. We see Trill characters.
Yeah.
So obviously, I'm guessing they use the spore drive to get there.
Did we see Trill characters?
Yes. The one that you thought maybe, who was it that you said you thought it was? You circled his face.
Yeah. He looks like Danny Putty from.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah. Those are Trill.
But I didn't think those were Trill. I don't see their spots.
I saw spots.
Oh wait, yeah, they're the spots.
Yeah, I think they're Trill.
Yeah. So I think that they're.
Oh yeah. Now I see this. I'm looking at it again. I do see the spots now.
So we might be meeting that second new character next week. And it's going to be somebody related somehow to Adira, so that's going to be interesting. Wendy says, speaking of music, has anyone else been annoyed by the swelling, overdramatic music this season?
Yeah, I'll say it does annoy me sometimes. And especially in the last 2 episodes of maybe the last 2 to 4 episodes of last season.
Yeah.
It just seems like the mix is a little bit off. Because when I have to focus extra hard to hear the words over the dramatic music in the background, I think they're getting something wrong.
Right. And I think we talked about this last week on our show too. And I remember saying that it was very much like the Russell T Davies era of Doctor Who, where the mix was always weird and Murray Gold's wonderful but heavy score was always seemed to be mixed too high. Like it just drowned things out.
Yeah, it just feels off. It doesn't feel very Star Trek, that aspect.
But I think it's really interesting that, and I think we mentioned this last week too, that in quarantine, they did the entire score.
Yes, amazing.
Individually. Mm-hmm. They sent recording equipment and Jeff got on, and I found out tonight, Jeff got on like Zoom calls with every member and talked them through how to set up the equipment, how to best place it in their house to get the best sound. And they each recorded their part of the entire 13 episode season, emailed it in, file transferred, and they put this whole thing together, one violin at a time, one cello at a time. That's amazing. Phenomenal.
Yes, pretty
fascinating. That's pretty amazing.
All right. Chris likes the music. Then again, I enjoy emotional manipulation.
Oh yes, we know that, Chris. We know that too well.
We've known you for a long time. And Wendy likes the music, but is like the whole ending of Lord of the Rings, like too much sentimentality.
Yeah, I believe I brought that up earlier in the show.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Not to call Wendy out for getting here late or anything, but yeah. There was this whole thing early in the show about them being sentimental, but whatever. Go ahead, Wendy. Tell us your thing.
Yeah, I do think it was needed in this episode, though. I'd be disappointed if we keep getting that. They are reconnecting after thinking they'd never see each other. So I think there's a lot of emotion involved in that maybe the music shouldn't be telling us that, but still, I thought it was needed in this episode.
Yeah.
It was interesting that Burnham mentioned her mother again, because obviously she's still looking for any traces of her. Do we think that during this season her mother will pop up at some point, or at least she'll get some clues as to where she might have gone or what happened to her?
I'll be surprised if we don't get some sort of closure about that. Yeah. Maybe she won't show up. Maybe they'll tell us that absolutely she's dead. But we are going to know what happened to her.
Yeah, and that may be something they say for next season. Like we'll get hints of a trail, and then next season we'll deal more with that in some way. Mm-hmm. Now that we know that they're going to be in the future for as long as they run, they have plenty of time to work that kind of thing out. I'm excited about them being in the world of the future.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The world of the future.
The world of the future.
Did anyone have?
Luckily, Wendy says that you crack her up. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to ask, anyone have thoughts on Captain Saru? Saru taking the captain's chair?
I thought it was awfully magnanimous of Michael to offer that to him.
I know, and he is truly the first
non-human
captain. Yeah, because I was trying to think, has there been a Vulcan captain that we knew of? No, I guess not. I guess that he is definitely the first non-human captain in Star Trek.
As far as on the lead ship of a show, yes, without a doubt.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, if we're accepting that William Shatner is human.
and going back to that, I especially with this season, I mean, I guess I noticed it the first 2 seasons, but I watched Doug Jones in long shots, like walking and moving.
Yeah.
And he is an alien presence. I mean, you feel like he is not a human playing somebody. You feel like he is a non-human.
Yeah.
That's a great point. If you watch any series that he's done recurring characters on, he always has these very, very particular mannerisms for each character that he does. And he comes up with these things, and he came up with a special way that Saru would walk.
Well, yes, right. That's what I noticed. When you do the long shot of him walking, the way he moves his arms and his legs, I mean, he's amazing.
Yeah.
If any of you listen to a podcast called Imaginary Worlds, which I highly recommend, in a recent episode of the show, the host interviewed Doug Jones about his career generally and about playing Saru in particular. It was very illuminating, and his background is acting, but he also has training as a mime. And if you know that really makes a lot of his character choices click into place. And so, like, the main thing with the physicality of Saru that he thought of was the fact that he swings his arms back and forth behind his body, which I don't think you've never seen a character do that before.
Right.
But it seems to make perfect sense for a Kelpian, for that character, and I like that. But getting back to that scene, though, it didn't make a lot of sense to me, because I didn't realize it was ever even on the table that Burnham could become the captain of Discovery. I mean, because the Discovery was handed off to Saru by Pike in season 2, and moreover, they're both commanders, but Saru is a more senior officer than Burnham. So, why was it even it even on the table for discussion? Why was it even on that broken table for discussion that Burnham might be the captain of Discovery?
Right. Just to have that moment where she's like, Saru, you carried this whole crew on your big, broad shoulders. You are a captain in every sense of the word.
Dislike.
And right, exactly. Well, and no one can have captaincy unless Michael Burnham says they can have captaincy.
Well, was it because they were up to a discussion? I mean, are they because there is no federation and there's nobody making these decisions, is it like a crew appointment then? I mean, were they all going to vote on who was going to be a captain? I mean,
they should have a Big Brother style elimination show.
Yeah, there you go. But I mean, seriously, how would they have decided about who was going to be captain because of the way they exist? I mean, would it have been a crew vote? I mean,
a rose ceremony.
Yeah.
About that, this is sort of a detour from that idea, but I want to talk about Giorgio just quickly, because not only when they have to dress up as Starfleet when they're getting inspected, as an admiral, because she said, well, I have to make it believable, but also when she beams book onto the ship, and she says, I like to know who it is that's coming aboard my ship. She says my ship.
Oh,
I think
yeah.
it's very interesting that she and Saru are already having this headbutting thing
Mm-hmm.
where she is obviously not going to accept his authority because he's food. And so I'm just really interested to see how far they're going to take this.
Yeah, I think we'll see it throughout the rest of the season.
Yep.
It's been really cool to see Saru, snap back at her. He's not backing down.
Absolutely.
That made some great moments so far. So yeah, I don't know. Giorgio is a lot to deal with.
Well, you said it there.
we need Daniel on this panel to put up for Giorgio.
Jojo is so extra.
Oh, I love her.
Wendy wonders if maybe Saru asks for permission because he remains underconfident. Plus, he believes in formal procedures.
Yeah,
possibly. We're going to get wrapped up here in just a minute. I just want to throw out a really quick story that I got from the Ready Room show tonight. When I mentioned in the intro about the San Francisco being fake and the tree being fake, the tree was fake. They Frakes scouted all over Vancouver to find a place that he thought looked like San Francisco and had there's a billion trees in Vancouver, but he couldn't find one that was big and looked old enough that it could have been 1,000-year-old tree. Mm-hmm. So they fucking made a fake tree. They made basically a green screen, huge tree stump that the characters could go up and lean on and that kind of stuff, and then painted a fucking tree on top of it. And they showed a close-up of when Tilly, leans up on it and kind of caresses it. Mm-hmm. The green screen, they put a bark-like texture on it. I just thought that was amazing. I just thought that was really cool.
They obviously have a good budget.
Yes, because they're getting one of those VR walls that Mandalorian uses.
Oh.
Also, and that brings up another point. The first 2 seasons, we did not get a whole lot of location shoots. Mm-hmm. We had the first 2 episodes, all exterior shots were in Iceland, and in this one was basically ship-based, but they found a way at the very end for, 6 of the crew to go down. Why those 6 and not like half the crew to go down and see, San Francisco. So I love that we're getting more location stuff.
Well, maybe I was thinking that too. Why there weren't more people down there around the academy? But I don't know. Maybe a lot of people went to where their home was, even though it was 1,000 years later. But
yeah, no, that I'm sure that's totally the case. The whole
I'm sure
crew
it is
went
too.
The whole crew went down to Earth. It's just that those 6 were the only dorks who wanted to go back to where they went to college.
Oh, they're such nerds.
Well, with Tilly, you kind of believe that it would have been too painful for her to go back because she'd already had that discussion about that, that everybody that she knew was dead. And so going back to where her home would have been, I think would have been very painful for her. Maybe she was going back to the last place that she would have still had happy memories of, that she would have felt that there was still a real connection there, even though it really wasn't the academy anymore.
Right. Absolutely.
All
right.
It's a swap meet.
Yeah. Well, no, I don't know if it was Saturday. Maybe they don't have days yet. I don't know.
Yeah, well, that's true. Wendy thought it was very obvious in the last shot that the tree was CHI.
Yes, it was totally Chicago.
Wendy, you're the best. All right. So let's wrap it up. Let's go around and tell me 1 out of 10, what's your rating for this week? Lisbeth, hit it.
I would give it a 9.
Wow.
Do you want to? I mean, do I have to go wide,
sure.
or can I just?
If you want to.
Well, I like the. I mean, I know that some of us felt it was a little sentimental, but I kind of like that. I like even though I complained about it at the beginning of this discussion, I still felt that that it was nice seeing you get back into the Star Trek storyline. The Federation storyline, where the Federation brought the 2 opposing groups together and made them realize that they were more the same than they were different. And I mean, that was just kind of refreshing to see. It was, and I like the introduction of the trill. I like that the introduction of Adira. It'll be interesting to see where that goes.
Clarence, what do you say?
I will give it an 8. One thing we didn't talk about that I really love was all the interactions between Burnham and Book.
Oh yeah, that's true. We didn't talk about Book at all tonight.
I love Giorgio dressing him down, putting him up against it as soon as he comes there on the transporter, and just the awkward moment. He had a lot of awkward, funny moments in this episode, and I thought all that was fun. So
he got a rash.
Yeah, he got to wear the uniform though, which was awesome.
And he didn't realize he was drinking synthahol.
Yeah,
no wonder I'm not getting a buzz.
Yeah, so I like how he was using this episode and all the things Lisbeth said with the Federation and getting back to maybe a complete nice little bow on this message of bringing two factions together in this episode. So yeah, I give it 8.
Awesome. Vanderbilt.
I give it 8 out of 10 transworms. I liked all the stuff that we agreed was cool about the story, and I always loved seeing Earth in Star Trek, and etc. And but I take off 2 transworms for the sentimentality. That was a little too cloying. But I did really appreciate all the CHI.
And I will give it an 8 out of 10 Maine Coon cats, because I think that it was a very good episode, but I think that there's a lot better stuff that's coming down the road. So I think there's going to be some 9s and there's going to be a couple of 10s later to come. So this one is definitely an 8, which on my scale is very strong.
And speaking of Maine Coons, I felt that they should have had Grudge in the episode at least.
Well,
one
he was
more
there
scene.
a little bit,
but not because she is a queen. Remember,
that's true.
Even though he really is a boy. But yeah, I felt that they could have had more Grudge in there somewhere.
So I guess Grudge is actually the first non-binary character in Star Trek.
Sorry,
yeah. That was inappropriate.
How dare you?
I agreed. All right, so hang on. Clarence, what's going on with the Discussing Network?
Yeah,
what's the news?
On the Discussing Network, we talk about different things: Doctor Who, Star Trek, comics, and if you're into any of that stuff, you can hit that URL and check us out.
I'm sure nobody watching this show is into any of that stuff.
Nah, no chance.
How have your discussions about Discovery been going so far?
They've been mostly positive. I think everyone is just happy to be from back to live action.
Yeah,
I think we're really excited about getting back to the pretty graphics and the high budget
and the CHI.
Yeah, the CHI.
All right, Lisbeth, what's new with Our Town DeKalb?
Well, I just closed the November issue yesterday, and I'm going to pick up the print copies tomorrow. It should be in mailboxes on Monday. So we're very excited about that. But personally, I'm very excited that The Mandalorian comes back tomorrow. So that means, I know it's wrong, but Baby Yoda will be back. And we all know how much I love Baby Yoda.
The child.
The Baby Yoda. I was at I was at Build-A-Bear tonight at Mall of Georgia, and I was so tempted to go in and build one of those really bad Baby Yodas just because I only have 7 other ones, and I felt I needed to add to my collection.
I think that Mandalorian is going to be really good tomorrow, but for me, Superstore starts back up tonight, and I'm doing this instead. So that's how much I love you all, and how much I love Star Trek.
There's always on demand.
I'm going to start an AFT deck, the Superstore after show. Maybe not. All right, Vandy-Beth, what's new with you?
Well, I've begun making my posts about the 1980s top 10 Billboard Hot 100 music.
Yes.
I started making those posts public, so you don't have to be a Facebook friend to come.
Oh, that's fantastic!
Listen along with us. So if only
you had thought of that back in the 70s.
Right. Anyway, let me see if I can. Right there's my name. Just look me up on Facebook with just that spelling, and you can play along. And apart from that, as I mentioned, I'm a poll worker. It's very, very important that everyone vote this year and vote for Joe Biden so that we will have a future of any sort whatsoever. Because the American democratic experience truly is at stake this year. I have no doubt about that. So everybody, if you haven't voted, please vote and vote for Biden.
And thank you for being a poll worker. And we will, if you feel like you need protection next week, let us know where you're working and we'll be there. Because I voted early, so I'm free on the 3rd.
I'll be fine, but thank you.
All right. And you can find me at Cosmic Press. I've got my brand new picture book, Lucy Can't Dance. I've got Doctor Who books. I'm working on a Star Trek book. And I've got projects from other authors on the way.
Yes.
Excellent.
Oh, and mention about that you're already on board to be at Dragon Con 2021.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now I don't have to because you did it for me, and I appreciate that very much. I'm going to be a guest again at Dragon Con next year, assuming that there is a Dragon Con next year.
There will be.
Fingers crossed.
Right. Thank you all so much for joining me. Next week we have episode 4, which most places that I've seen listed is called Forgot Me Not. In the after show, Will Wheaton pronounced it Forget Me Not. I don't know if he was incorrect or if the other places are incorrect, but I think Forgot Me Not is a really interesting title. So I'm looking forward to seeing that, seeing some trills, and seeing where we go with all our various storylines. Thank you all so much. I hope you have a wonderful night. It was a pleasure to spend this hour with you all. It's always a joy.
Same.
And for those watching, thank you so much. Be good to each other, spread love, go vote, and we'll see you next week. All right, we're out of here. See ya.
Bye.